as we go into some of these verses going forward, especially in Paul's writings, I want to make sure that I'm clear about what I'm not going to be clear about. If that makes any sense. Okay, in other words, we're going to touch on some sections here in 2 Corinthians and in other writings today and in other parts, okay? We're going to touch on some areas that will be peripheral to things that you may want answers to, but they're not necessarily pertinent or specific or connected to this idea of unity and division. I know all of you have heard the verses of, well, don't be unevenly yoked or unequally yoked with somebody, an unbeliever. We've had that used in trying to split up marriages. We've heard that used in people being friends with people. What is Paul really talking about, though? What is the issue? And so I think we're going to unravel that today in a way that you probably never, ever thought of. I totally missed other times I've read through the letter how much Paul is trying to make a case for himself that they should be listening to him and not somebody else. I missed that. Did you miss that? Because look at it. It was in chapter 3. It was in chapter 5. It's here in chapter 4. And it's going to be again in chapter 7. And so this piece in verse 14 through 18 with the unequally yoked is in the middle of all of that. And so I'm going to tell you that I believe it has to do with teachers and teaching and discipleship and not what you always thought it meant. So when he says, do not be unevenly yoked with unbelievers, you know, the phrase yoked in the first century was very much linked to discipleship, okay? The yoke of the teacher that you chose to come under. And so you would yoke yourself to that teacher. You wouldn't just sit in a classroom and say, okay, I'll give you a few minutes today and then I'll go do whatever I want. I'll come back tomorrow for more teachings. You actually yoked yourself to that teacher. Who are you listening to? He just spent 3 chapters and probably more if I go back to chapter 1 trying to make a case for why aren't you not just listening to me? This is what I think Paul's talking about in 2 Corinthians. Why are you listening to all these other people and not just listening to me? I was sent to you. I became your discipler. We developed a relationship and both relationships. We were co-workers and we were socially and fellowshipping together. And we developed this discipling relationship, which is an intimate, close relationship. Why are you allowing others to now influence you? And hopefully we can start to see how, because of that, division comes into the body. Come to me, all you who labor and are burdened, and I give you rest. Okay, is it a stretch that the laboring and burdening have to do with information? See, people will just read that verse out of the context, but the context has to do with understanding and information. People that are laboring and struggling to understand, and they have no shalom because they're so stressed over needing to know. Because people will read that verse 28, and they'll think that that has to do with, I'm exhausted, I'm worn out, I'm working hard, I'm all beat down. No, the context here is about information. So what is causing a lot of the division and the stumbling? Teaching. Wrong teaching, coming from the wrong people. It's causing division. Hopefully we can see that in the body today. What's causing most of the fighting? We're fighting over in teachings, information, the way we understand things. All of you listening on YouTube or anywhere now and in the future that's going to tell me that you don't need a teacher and yet you never look for teachings. Don't tell me you don't need a teacher unless you absolutely never pick up anything but your Bible. Because you're lying. Okay? I'm just got to call it what it is. You are absolutely lying. And you know who you're lying to? Yourself. You're not dealing with your self-sovereign issues. You cannot claim that you don't need a teacher but the Ruach and then go listen to any teachings out there. Why are you doing it? For entertainment? So we've been talking about division. We've been talking about things that cause division. Now I will tell you, division is not always bad. In other words, what matters is who's causing it and who's doing it. And what we're going to see now in this section, I call this section, Yahweh does the dividing. So there will be dividing being done, but it's Yahweh that does the dividing. He wants to see how you handle division. Are you going to be one of the ones who's nasty, causing horrible, deep rifts? Or are you going to be the one trying to seek peace? You know, Paul tells us, if possible, be at peace with all men. Are you going to try to do that in the midst of division? How do you handle those things? Because when there's disagreement or there's some sort of a dividing issue, the easiest thing is to split. The harder thing to do is to try to find a way to work it out. By the way, so what does the enemy do? How does he sow the darnel or the tares? How does he do that? He gets you to do what you want, that you, as all your preferences, the me stuff. Because remember, we talked about the devil on a regular enough basis about the fact that he's not an initiator. What he does is he plants the seed of, you could do what you want. What you want to do is right. Oh, you don't have to worry about what Yahweh said. Oh, don't listen to that teacher. You don't need a teacher. That's what he's sowing. He's sowing the seeds of, you don't need anybody. You should just do what you want and what's right in your own eyes. That's what he's sowing in that field. You're the field, the fertile field of your mind. And if you would allow the devil to do that, he will plant those seeds of justifying, rational lying to yourself what you want so that you get to have what you want, not what Yahweh said. He also says here, I'm going to be dealing with those that are causing stumbling blocks. I'm going to get rid of all the stumbling blocks and those doing lawlessness. In other words, the tares were causing problems for the wheat. And you need to be aware of that possibility in your life. You know, where are those tares causing problems? Don't try to figure out who's who. But figure out what you need to do as a wheat. Find your teacher. Get under that teacher. Work with that teacher who's working with Yeshua, who's working with the Father, that's in line with the Scriptures, and do what you're supposed to do. What we do to each other, I think the idea of division, unity, etc., all fits into these categories of how we treat each other is how he feels about how we treat him. Because the way we treat each other, it's as if we're treating him. So when you are not loving, joyful, peace, patience, meek, gentle, good, all the things that are in the fruit of the Spirit, and you're doing that to one of the other people in the body, and by the way, it's not for you to figure out if they're in the body or not. I would treat everybody that way just in case, because you don't know.